afternoon and welcome everybody. Glad to have you back here at Grace Church with us for some more great organ music. I started today with one of my very favorite pieces by Dieterich Buxtehude. Buxtehude was a North German composer. He predated Bach a bit. They overlapped a little bit, but he really did lay the groundwork for what we know as the North German organ school. And was an inspiration to Bach. There's legend and lore about Bach walking miles and miles and miles to hear Buxtehude play, and certainly would have known his style though, and gave us great, exciting music for the organ with lots of pedal work. That was one of his preludia, which is basically a sort of a free-form short toccata at the beginning, and then a lot of little fugues, and this one ends with sort of a chaconne or a repeated bass line. So just really a great and strong piece. Hope you enjoyed that. This recital today, I'd like to play in memory of Mary Poole, who was my first organ teacher. Mrs. Poole died yesterday, I think at the age of 86, at her home or with her family in Mississippi, which is where she grew up. She was a really profound influence on me in a very small town in the rural South. There weren't too many organists, accomplished organists. We were blessed to have 3 or 4 actually in my little town of McKenzie. But Mrs. Poole taught at the local college. She and her husband, he taught choral music, directed choirs, and she taught piano and organ and played for the college occasions. And she was the first person I heard play French classic music. She played the wonderful Noël by Daquin. I remember just being so taken by that music when I first heard her play it. She also was very clever about recital titles. I remember when I was very young, well, I think before I was even studying, my mother took me to a recital she played, and it was called The Many Moods of J.S. Bach. So the power of alliteration in a concert title, I think, is stuck with me through the years. So thinking of Mrs. Poole's family, her husband, Dr. Poole, and her 3 children, Franklin, Bryant, and Helen, all of whom are friends, I count as friends, and we're thinking of them and already missing Mrs. Poole and her great influence. So along the lines of that French classic piece that I just played, I'd like to play a piece by Jean-François Dandrieu. This is an offertoire, or an offertory for Easter, based on the melody O Filii et Filiae, which is O Sons and Daughters of the King. This hymn was our hymn this past Sunday because it's associated with Thomas, the doubting disciple Thomas. And second Sunday of Easter, which was this past Sunday, that's what we read about and sing about. So this is based on that melody. It's a marvelous set of variations with very specific registration requirements for the organ. So it sort of lays out the tune or the theme, and then there are lots of variations that go through to sort of a big finish. There are lots of ornaments. I've demonstrated for you before when notes have ornaments, or lots of that kind of stuff, which makes it really colorful and interesting, and uses lots of reed sound on the organ. All the reed sounds I'm using today are digital because all of our real reed stops and pipes are unusable. Maybe someday they will be again, but for today we'll have lots of digital reeds buzzing away at you. So this is Dandrieu, offertoire for Easter on O Filii et Filiae. such great music. One thing interesting between this piece and the Buxtehude before it, even though timeline they weren't so far off, Buxtehude a little earlier, the French organ was really pedal-wise, you've heard me say, wasn't really nearly so developed as the German organ. So this has minimal pedal use, basically just sort of punctuating the cadences of the piece, while the Buxtehude was very busy and the feet really took a leading role. So next I'm going to play something very different. This is a modern composition published in 2004. It's written by Carson Cooman, who's a native of Rochester, New York. Mr. Cooman is well known as a composer in the United States, very prolific, has written hundreds and hundreds of organ pieces actually. He's been composer in residence at the Memorial Church at Harvard since 2006. He has been composer in residence at the Cathedral of St. Paul in Boston. Has just done so much work, and I'm not terribly familiar with his music. This was new to me. A friend recently gave me this edition of his organ music and sort of dug through. So I'm going to play today a set of 3 voluntaries. These are just, they're simply designated by tempo: slow, joyful, and moderate. so those titles don't tell us a lot. I like these pieces a lot. They're very different from what you normally hear me play. I've not played Hindemith for you, and maybe Mr. Hines will at some point. I don't play a lot of Hindemith. Paul Hindemith, mid-century German composer who spent much time in America at Yale. These pieces to me are slightly reminiscent of Hindemith, particularly the first and third. So again, you might think of these as almost a palate cleanser, coming from the sort of bombastic things I've been playing, and I'm going to end with some bombast today. So these are 3 voluntaries by Carson Cooman. They were written for the First Congregational Church in Nantucket. So I'm very fond of these pieces. Hope you enjoy them. those nice pieces. He uses a technique that I like a lot, which is displaced dissonance. So, meaning dissonance, you might know, is when two notes sort of clash. But if you take the same notes, say a G and an A, when side by side, they really clash. But if you put the A an octave plus away from the G, it's still dissonant, but in a very different way. Or if you put it below, it doesn't sound nearly so dissonant as. So I like that displaced dissonance, and he uses that, I think, very effectively. Again, a nice palate cleanser, those pieces. So our program today is going to end with an early piece by Bernardo Storace. He's one of those composers. If you look him up on Wikipedia or Google him, basically we find out that we don't know much about him at all. He lived from 1637 to 1707, essentially, which were oddly enough the same dates as Buxtehude, and I didn't know that before today. So we're starting and ending the program with people who were of the exact same dates, though they'll probably never met. Storace, Italian, of course, Buxtehude, North Germany. This piece, interestingly, is for either organ or harpsichord, and I listened to a number of recordings on it. It's called Ballo della Battaglia, which is battle dance, basically. I'm not quite sure if a battle dance is something you do before you go into battle to get yourself revved up, or if it's something you do if you win. I'm quite sure it's something you don't do if you lose the battle. So on the organ, the way I'm going to play it, it's going to be pretty battle-like and pretty powerful. I was saying earlier to David, though, I listened to some recordings on the harpsichord. We don't have a harpsichord stop, but something like this. It can be very delicate, this piece. So that's nice. We're not going to do that. We're going to sort of pull out all the stops, as it were, and hammer away on this thing. It's a bit improvisatory as well, sort of a framework for the organist to follow. And there's no real pedal lines. I'm sort of making up what the pedal does as I go along, and figuring out what bass notes I want to put down in the feet. And there's some echo effects. Not sure you will hear them. I hope you can hear them. But one echo effect is this, where I'm playing here on the, sort of the front and back organ, and then go just to the back. So listen for that. Not sure how that'll translate on our camera, but hopefully it will. So again, thank you for being with us today, remembering Mary Poole. I should say Mrs. Poole went to Ole Miss, which is in Mississippi, and did an undergraduate degree, I believe, in French, which I always found fascinating, and then went to New York City and studied at the Union Seminary School of Sacred Music. She was a student of Charlotte Gardner. And again, I learned so much from her. She was very versatile. Everything from playing Bach to accompanying the college production of HMS Pinafore, being a one-woman orchestra at the piano. So thinking of Mrs. Poole today and her family. And we'll leave you with Battle Dance by Bernardo Storace.